Alright, hey guys, it's Mrs. Corneman here. Hi. I'm going to be drawing some stuff with charcoal to help you understand how the material works and how I actually do the stuff that I do in the front of the class that's maybe like too small for you to see. So hopefully this is helpful. You can stop it if you want to go back. So I'm going to make, there's my pencil, I'm going to make a still life. I can't actually show you what it looks like because it's over here and I'm not that technologically advanced yet. It's got one of these guys. All right, yes, yeah, yeah. And some fruit, okay, an apple, and a pear. If you're wondering why I have band-aids on my fingers, it's because I have two really bad hangnails, and it's just a bummer. So I don't want to deal with it. So band-aids it is. And then this thing. This is my like cylindrical object. So I've got those arranged in a pleasing fashion. So the very first thing I want to do is with my pencil, like just super, oh so gently, oh so lightly, indicate where on my paper these things live. So I'm going to start with my apple, right? And I know that it's somewhere in my still life, it's somewhere down here. So I want to make it like this size-ish. I can change my mind later, but I don't even know if you can see. Yeah, you can see that. Just super, light, right? And then there's a pear next to it, sort of in this space, right? And then here's the opening for my cylinder object. Lives kind of up here, comes down. Well, you know what? Actually, it's more like to this side of the apple. So I'm already gonna erase what I just did. Boop, boop, boop. Look at that. Done. It's a helpful idea to use things that you've already drawn as reference points. So like I can tell where my little jug of water thing is based on my apple. So if my apple's over here, I can see by looking at it that the jug of water comes out like from this part of the apple. So I know that line is there. So using that as like a gauge, I can sort of make decisions about the other parts of my drawing. Constantly sort of assessing and reassessing. So like my big cube thing happens like maybe about an inch from the apple. It comes down like this. One face of it is here. Here's the edge, right? And so I just sort of put that where it goes. I like that, right? And then the handle comes in somewhere over here. So I'm really not going to do any more than that right now, right? And it's pretty small, but I need to be able to fit this on the paper so you guys can see. So this is just like a super light, I got the bottom of the jug here, drawing of where everything is, just so I know when I go back in later with my charcoal, so I don't start just like charcoaling like crazy. There we go. I like that. That feels good to me. Okay, so I have a couple of things. I have my regular compressed charcoal. I have my kneaded eraser, which I showed you guys the other day. It's fun. You can like pull it apart, and you can like take a small piece of it and mold it to like just exactly the shape you need to just like erase little bits. So that's fun. Keep that. And then I also have a piece of white charcoal, which I'm going to use at the end for highlighting. It just like gives it a little bit of an extra fancy kick and makes it look so pro. So the very first thing I'm going to do is look at my still life and decide where the darkest parts are. And again, I'm going to start with my apple. Okay, so the way I have it set up on my desk, the light's coming from like behind it. So right in front is where the darkest shadow is. So my apple here is kind of one of those like, looks like a fake apple. Well, it is a fake apple because it's from the still life jar. So I'm just I'm going to go in and first draw the darkest shadowy parts of my apple. And I'm sort of also indicating the contour lines of this apple. So it has like one of those like bumpy bottoms, you know, it's like, that's the way the apple's shaped. That's the way the cookie crumbles. That's not how it goes. All right. So I'm doing that just at the bottom, just where that is. I'm just going to start there. And I'm going to take my finger and sort of, in little circles, start to blend that dark reservoir of charcoal that I created upward, right? And I don't want to go upward in a straight line because apples are not straight lines, right? They are curvy, right? So as I go upward with my blending, I curve the line, right? I curve to indicate the shape of the apple, right? And I'm just slowly pulling the charcoal up in the direction of the sphere. Okay, so looking at my apple, I have to keep referring back to my apple. I have to keep looking at it. It's not enough to just be like, oh, it's a sphere, it's a circle. I know how to do this, right? You have to look at the actual shadows of your specific object on the day that you photographed it or wherever you're looking at it, because light will change based on what room you're in or based on the time of day, right? So we want your specific apple or whatever it is. So I can see that mine is a little bit darker on this side, and there's also sort of like a band of darkness that comes across. Again, not straight across because apples are not planar objects. It's not even a word. Is that even a word? I don't even know, but it made sense in my mind, so I went with it. It's not, there's no plane like there is on a cube, right? It's a sphere. It's a round object. So if I say that the shadow goes across my object, it's not going to go across in a straight line. It's going to go across in that U shape. Just like we did the contour lines with the pen, we're still shading in cross contour lines. You still have to think in that curved way, right? So I'm going to sort of smush out my shadow here, and then what always makes the apple look totes realistic is putting the little like middle part here, right? But it doesn't go like on the top of the apple, it goes inside, right? So that's it. And then what's fun to do with your little middle part of your apple that I've done there is I'm taking out the charcoal and smudging it out in like almost like a star pattern, which creates, again, like those smudgy lines are in the shape of the actual apple itself, right? So it's indicating, just the way we did with the contour lines, the shape of the object based on the shape of my smudges. It's basically magic. Okay, so I'm just now adding like some more little details. Wherever I see shadow, I will add some charcoal. Wherever it's light, I'm leaving it alone, right? I'm using the paper itself as the whiteness of the object or the lightness of the object, right? And see, that looks so good. And it took me like a minute, not even, right? And it totally looks like a real, legit apple. Just by copying the shadows, right? Boom, apple, done. Bah. Okay, now, there's a pear next to it. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing I did, right? I'm going to start with the bottom of the pear, indicating where there's like little lumpy bits, because it's like an organic shape. It's not perfect, so it's got some inconsistencies. Bring that out. Brings out the character of your pear. I kind of feel like I'm doing a cooking show right now. This is very exciting. It's like I'm famous, basically. All right. So here I'm adding the shadow at the bottom. And again, I'm pulling up, curving slightly in the direction of my thingy, my guy, right? There's a little bit of shadow up here. I'm just looking at what it is. I am forgetting in my brain that this is a pear, and I am just drawing the stuff that I see, right? So this is the stuff that I see. I see some shadows over here, so I'm going to draw some shadows over here. Never mind that I'm like, maybe this is not what a pear looks like. But you just have to trust, I guess, is the thing. You have to trust, you have to keep going and trust that like eventually it's going to look like the thing you want it to look like. The whole time you're doing it, you're going to be like, this is terrible, this is terrible, this is wrong. And then eventually it's going to get to a point where you're like, oh, an apple. Okay, I see, I get there. It's not going to look like the thing that it is the whole time. It's not going to look like the thing it is until you're done, right? So you just have to trust the process and just keep going and trust that it's going to get there, right? So right now it's kind of like an egg, my pear, right? Because it's like totally smooth. Pears don't really do that. So I just need to like indicate where maybe there's some more shadows over here. Like, oh, okay, now we have that like that lumpy part of the pear is coming out, right? I can sort of see that. And then I'm gonna add my little stemmy guy, just like a little whoop. Okay, and now because I made a stem, it's got a little shadow, right? It casts a little bit of a shadow there. Work that out. No. Okay. Now, the other thing that's important is that this pear is behind this apple. So this apple is going to cast a shadow on my pear. I can see it. I can see it happening. So I have to find where that is. Okay. And just color it in, basically. Right? And it's sort of like, there's like two things happening. There's like the darkest part of the shadow, which I sort of leave alone. And then there's like a lighter shadow like right next to it, which I indicate here. Right? And now I've got that happening. There's a little line in here that I want to get rid of. Yeah. That's good. Okay. And then the pear itself and the apple also cast a shadow, right? So I'm going to find where that is next to the pear, right? I see that the circle starts about here, and it's kind of like this shape, and it comes to about here on the apple. So I find that, and I literally color it in. It's going to be the very darkest right next to the pear. And it's going to be pretty dark the whole way through, but it's maybe slightly lighter toward the edges, just the very littlest bit, right? And then I sort of mush. I always blend in little circular motions. It just sort of works out better that way when you do that. Okay, so there's my little pear shadow, and then my apple shadow is over here. It's very, very dark right here. It's coming out pretty big, actually. Comes up to like about here, and it's light. It's a light shadow, right? It's not as dark as this one. So I'm just going to very, very lightly color it in, and then mush. Charcoal is so much fun. It really is. I know you're all like, it's on my clothes, it's the worst. It's not, it's fun. It's great. It's proof that you've been doing art. Hooray. Okay, shadows. Look at that. Totally looks so finished and nice, and the rest is just my little thing, right? If you just like looked at that, you'd be like, oh my god, it must have taken you so much time. No, you can see that it did not take me hardly any time at all. Okay, so now we're going to move on. I want to do the cube next because a lot of you have been treating your cubes like they are not cubes. Okay, like they're cylinders or like they're round things. A cube has three sides, right? And they're all flat sides. So the light is not going to reflect off them the way that it reflects off a round thing. Okay, one side is going to be very dark, one side is going to be medium dark, and one side is going to be light. Right? So looking at my object, this is the darkest side because the light is coming from behind my still life. So I am going to color in this side. I don't want to go like crazy hard, right? I don't want to create like an avalanche of charcoal dust in my life. It's a good idea to like constantly blow on your work to get away all the little pieces of stuff. Alright, so I'm just sort of coloring this in, and there's a piece of paper underneath this, which is creating this line here, which is killing my dreams. It's fine. Okay, so color that in, right? And then I mush, but careful on the edges, right? You don't want to overextend your mush. You just want to, oh, I got charcoal on my Band-Aid. Okay, right? That's one side. Pretty heavy, pretty dark. Then I'm going to find my next darkest side. If I'm just looking at it, I can see it's this side. It's not quite as dark as this, but it's not as light as this. It's somewhere in the middle. The first thing I'm going to do is just like take my finger that I've been mushing the charcoal with, and I'm just going to like see if that's the color I want. Oh, it's pretty close, actually. That's good. The danger with trying to color something in with a light charcoal value is that like if you try to draw it first, a lot of the time you can still see the streaks. So it's a better idea to like take from a reservoir of charcoal, even if you do it on like a separate part or like a separate scrap piece of paper, right? If I'm just like, I just need like a piece of paper that's gonna act as my like charcoal pool, right? And I just like make some charcoal there and I dip my finger in it like paint every once in a while, right? And I use that to apply the charcoal instead of drawing it on there. You'll get a much more smooth and even application of charcoal that way. Little tip, little trick of the trade. Okay, so that's my second lightest value. And then my lightest one, I can sort of leave blank if I want to, or I can just like very, very extremely lightly sort of go over it as such. Okay, that's even a little bit too dark. But hey, this is a job for my kneaded eraser. Remember how I told you it's like a silly putty, right? So I can just like press on my paper repeatedly until it comes off in the way I want it to come off. Look at that. Oh my god. Amazing. Right? Okay, so that is my cube. That is how we do a cube. Quite simple, right? Now, for the shadow coming off of my cube, the shadows are gonna, like the shadows came off of my my apples and things in a curvy way, right? The shadow from my cube is gonna come off in a straight line, right? So I can, looking at the ground in front of my still life, I can see that the shadow comes out sort of like this, right? And sort of blends into my other shadows over here. It's this whole area is just sort of like one big shadow. But I'm actually going to take from my charcoal reserve for this one, okay? And I'm going to indicate, and I want my shadow to be definitely darker than this side, right? So I'm going to keep adding to it until I have a value I like. Right, it sort of comes, it sort of just like fades into nothingness and comes out here this way. I'm just sort of pulling the charcoal away from the object over here, right? So I can see that it sort of does that kind of thing, right? This is all one big shadowy area in my world. Okay, let's straighten this out a little bit. There we go. All right, so now we want to tackle the vessel, canister, call it what you will. All right, so don't be intimidated by a big thing, right? It's the same basic principles. I'm going to look for my darkest value. Right now, that is right next to the cube because the cube is casting a shadow onto my container. I don't know what to keep calling this thing. All right, so I'm going to just make it very dark right here, right next to it. Okay, you can see that it comes sort of like that. And I just constantly looking back at my still life to figure out what it's doing. Right? Something like that. Okay, I'm just going to leave that alone for a minute. Let that sort of live. I'm not gonna mush it too much. Then I need to see where some of the other shadows are. So, like I said, this object, the light is coming from behind it, so there's a lot of shadows going on here. But let's just start with the spout, right? So right now the bottom of this is very dark, so I'm going to indicate that with my charcoal, right? And I'm sort of outlining the curve of this right here, okay? And I'm just gonna blend, 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 so on and so forth. You can see the shape of it here. All right, so let's blend that all the way up to the top. There's more shadows on there, but we can add them later. But right now, I just want to get general shape of this thing. If you ever see a spot in your work where there's like a hard line where there shouldn't be one, just try to sort of correct that as you go and make those little blendy squiggles so that you can erase any hard lines where there shouldn't be any. Okay. All right, so there's my little spout guy. Okay, we can clean him up later. Actually, I've got there's a shadow here. Okay. Boop, boop, boop. So just like we did with that crazy squiggly line drawing that we did, the first one, the really colorful one with that little exercise we did, when you surround the sides of an object with dark and it's light in the middle, it's going to look like it's curved. All right, so just like we did those, you know, we colored these guys in. We did like dark in the corners and it was light in the middle, right? That's kind of what we're doing here, right? Where I've got dark on one side, a little bit dark on the other side. In the middle, it's light, so it gives the illusion of being curved. All right, so we're going to do the same sort of thing on the sides here. Oh, somebody's coming in. It makes me nervous. It's okay. I'm going to keep talking. They're going to think I'm talking to myself. It's going to be funny. I think they're coming to clean. Okay, we have some here. So I'm just working my way from the outside in, right? And I can see, you guys can't see, but on the top of my object, there's this kind of shape. Comes in here. Oh no. Okay. Right? And then the rim comes this way, following that same curve. Right? Again, when you are drawing something across an object that is cylindrical or round, your lines are going to be curved and not going to be straight across, right? So this guy comes in over here. There's a dark line like that. This comes like this. Basically just coloring in, like it's a coloring book. I have on my lines. I know where everything lives. That was loud. Right, so I'm just filling in where it's dark. And if it isn't dark, I don't color it. This is the boring part where I'm just drawing and I just tell you what I'm doing. And you're like, yeah, okay. Right, so there's actually like a lot of like highlights and different spots on this thing. So I'm going to get the sort of basic shape first, and then I can go in and make it look fancy with my white charcoal later. I've got some areas on here. So there's this area that like goes, there's like, it's like some shading right here, but I'm not just like coloring straight lines, right? I'm making these little curvy lines in the same direction of my object, right? And then later I can go in and mush it all. But again, swish, swish, swish in the direction of the object. It's gonna go toward making it look much more realistic. Let's see, what does it do over here? We have some shadow here, which is like the reflection of this thing on the actual object. Same thing here. Same kind of situation here. There we go. This is just all like look and draw and look and draw and do whatever is there and just sort of trust. Again, like I'm just drawing crazy lines because that's what I'm seeing, right? Like I am not trying to be like, oh, it doesn't look like a thing. I'm just trusting that when it's done, it's gonna look like what it's there. Right, there's a little bit of a shadow here from the apple. That's what that little shady spot is. That's cool. Alright, this is a little bit darker actually, so I'll fill that in. what is this stuff? Okay, so the inside, when you have something like this, a cylindrical object, to make it appear hollow, you want to shade the opposite side of whatever the most shady spot is. So like mine is like darker on this side, so I'm going to make, I can see that this side is a little bit darker on the inside. And again, now my lines are curving this way because I am making them parallel with this top curve, just like we did with the contour line drawing, right? So like before it was this way, now it's the opposite direction. All right, so I'm indicating my shadows here. Oh, there's actually like a little line. Part of the jug does that. And there. Ooh. Right, so now I can see that's more sharp on there. So now it's starting to look like it's a hollow object. Like you can put some water in there, or your favorite Gatorade, whatever you like to drink. Okay, cool. So I feel like it's not perfect, but it's close. It looks like things. It looks like it could be an object in the world that exists in real life, right? So the last thing I want to do is add my highlights, okay? And that's a fun part. And you can do that with the white charcoal here, right? So I'm just going to look at where the light is bouncing off in like very specific points in my thing. Oh, there's actually a little bit of shadow here from the jug. Look at that. Realistic. Okay. So on my apple, there's like a little highlight here, and there's some over here near the top, and there's some like doing this. Sure, why not? And there's some at the top of my pear a little bit, and in this corner, and then there's a bunch on my jug thingy. Literally just drawing wherever I see stuff and just trusting that it's gonna look cool when it's done, right? I'm not obsessing. I'm not like, oh my god, this is terrible, I can't draw, I'm the worst, right? I'm just trusting. I trust that I know what I'm doing. I trust that I'm an art teacher and like probably know what I'm doing, right? I mean, let's hope so, right? Okay, let's see some here. Okay, all right. A little bit more here. That's actually like also kind of blending for me, which is nice. It's cool. Do I want that line there? I don't want this line here. I want it to be darker. There we go. Okay. Okay, I feel pretty good about this. It didn't take me that long. It's not perfect, but I feel like it accurately represents the sort of thing that you should be doing, the way you should be thinking when you are approaching charcoal drawing. You have a lot more time, and B, a lot bigger piece of paper to do this on. So I don't want you to do it as quickly as I did it. I don't want you to be like, but I do want you to not be afraid. So, you know, at a certain point, it is about just like putting the charcoal on the paper and just going with it. But I also want you to like plan it out, take your time with the pencil, with the little sketches beforehand. But then once you start with the charcoal, you just kind of like gotta go with it and just be like, this is it. There's no turning back. There's no looking back. This is what I gotta do. It's exciting and it's fun. So I hope this was helpful. Obviously, I am still here to answer your questions and I can help you, but you can sort of rewind this and play it back and play it as many times as you want to and look at specific parts if you need help. So I hope it helped you out. Okay, bye.